Welcome back. It is another great week here in Georgia, and I'm excited to spend some time with you talking about the best and worst places to live in 2023. There's been a lot of articles that have been put out, and I'm so excited to have a guest on with me today. Everybody, welcome Brandon Blankenship. Hey, Brandon.
How's it going, sir? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being on. And Brandon is an excellent Keller Williams agent that serves the Chicago suburbs. And Brandon, you also have a channel as well in the Chicago area, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I have a YouTube channel just like Sarah about living, playing, and everything else in between in the Chicago suburbs and just the Chicagoland area. And Sarah can attest to this. People that reach out to us on YouTube are probably the greatest people in the world. And it's super cool to just not call you a client, but also a friend.
Yeah, it has been the greatest thing that has come out of being a real estate agent and social media and putting those two together. It's been very, very rewarding.
hmm
Um, so tell me a little bit more about the Chicago market and what you're seeing as far as relocation, people coming in, people coming out. What does that look like?
hmm Yeah. So, like and everyone, all the news knows, they always talk about this mass exodus coming out of Chicago and people relocating out of the area and everything like that. But for me, I work a lot of relocation coming into the city. And the thing that I noticed, the biggest trend about the people relocating here to the Chicagoland area, it's people that are originally from the Midwest that work from home now, so they can be closer to family. And then two is just job. I mean, we have a lot of job growth here with, being having the city of Chicago right there. And, compared to big cities like LA, Miami, and New York, Chicago is more on the affordable scale in terms of those big cities. And, the Chicago suburbs has a lot of infrastructure. Niche.com ranks the Chicago suburbs public schools some of the best public schools in the nation. We have a suburb called Naperville that is considered through niche to be the number one place to raise a family and the number one place for the best public schools in America. So there's a lot going on in the Chicago suburbs. I know a lot of people say that people are leaving, Chicago and everything like that. While that is true for the warmer states, but there's a lot of people coming in as well.
Yeah. So where do you see the most people relocating into Chicago?
I would say my area, the Chicago western suburbs. So I'm born and raised in Glen Ellen, Illinois, which is about 35 minutes west of the city of Chicago, and I'm about 10 to 15 minutes from Naperville, which is kind of the hub of the western suburbs. And a lot of people relocate here because of schools. Truly, I mean, it's not just from people from out of state, but it's a lot of people from the city of Chicago doing a lot of research, which is a lot of the relocation I help too, because a lot of times people are trading their $500,000 two-bed, two-bath condo for a four-bed, 2.5 bath house with on a quarter acre with a basement here in the Chicago suburbs. So they're trading that space. And a lot of my clients that I work with are typically young professionals or people that are starting families. So a lot of those families and everything are relocating to the suburbs for schools for the most part. And then
Yeah.
the people from out of state are, they primarily don't want to live in the state of Chicago, but they work there. And the nice thing about the Chicago suburbs is that we have train lines in all pretty much majority of the towns in the western suburbs, and it's pretty easy to get to the city, whether it's by public transport, whether it be the bus or the train, or just drive to the city because we have highways. So.
So what does that commute look like? So one thing that we get a lot of complaints here in the Atlanta area is that
Mhm.
traffic is terrible, and
Right.
so we always have lots of questions about that, especially whenever someone's working a job in the city. So
Mhm.
what does that look like living in the suburbs and then commuting into Chicago for a job?
Yeah, so I mean, I lived in California too, and California traffic, LA traffic is brutal. But here, what I've noticed traffic wise is that a lot of my like people that I went to school with that work in the city, and a lot of just like family friends and just people that I know that work in the city, typically take the train. And the train from where I live in Glen Ellen to the city of Chicago is about a 50-minute train ride. But during the prime time hours of like 7:30, 8 a.m., and even like 5:30 p.m., when typically people are heading to the city for work or leaving the city to come back to the suburbs, we have these trains called express trains where the train rides skip a lot of stops and the train ride's only like 30 minutes. So the only downside to it is that you have to make that train because once it's gone, you're out. But To me, I mean, traffic here is pretty predictable. I'm not sure how it is by you guys, but I remember living in California is that you can't predict it. I mean, traffic could start at 2 p.m., but here, I mean, it's typically when people get off work and everything like that. So the commute wise, not anything too crazy to the city of Chicago. I mean, it truly just depends where you're working in the city. I mean, straight to the downtown to the heart. I was in the city earlier today and it was a 30-minute drive. Not bad at all with no traffic.
Yeah, that's so nice. So I definitely think that's probably like an area that Chicago has a leg up on
Hmm.
the Atlanta area because traffic is pretty bad. Our
Right.
public transportation is not the best. So we do have a mass transit system called MARTA.
Okay.
And if you're living inside the perimeter where you're close to those train stations, it's much easier. But a lot of the affordable suburbs where most families live are, definitely outside of that
Right.
public transportation area. So you're looking
Hmm.
at like driving a car to
Right.
the train station and then getting on MARTA and then into the town. So yeah, we have a viewer, Dirk, who lives in the area, says traffic is terrible here. I moved from Detroit area in June. Georgia roads are laid out like a child's crayon doodle. That's a good point. So yeah, like our city wasn't necessarily like a planned city where you have
Hmm.
blocks and planned
Oh,
infrastructure.
interesting.
All the towns are, you know, sometimes it's really difficult to get around town, or it can be a lot
Hmm.
longer than for people that are coming from like planned Midwestern
Right.
suburbs. So I had a friend that lives in St. Louis, and
Okay.
when we went there to visit her, it was interesting because the neighborhoods there, what she would call a neighborhood, would really just be like a
Right.
group of blocks together.
Right.
And then they would have like a neighborhood pool like within the blocks,
Yep. Hmm.
which was very, very interesting to me because when we call like a neighborhood here, it's like you're going in one entrance and then there's 1,500 homes, and
That's a
that
lot.
is the neighborhood.
That's crazy.
So, what is like the average price point of a house in the suburbs of Chicago? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I mean, it depends. I would say your typical two-story colonial home with a basement, 4 bed, 2.5 bath. Where I live and where I service primarily is around 500 to 600K.
Okay.
But typically for like a 3 bed, 2 bath ranch with a basement, you're looking between 300 and $400,000 with about 1,800 square feet above living. So it's pretty solid. But here in the Chicago suburbs, I mean, the prices just kind of truly vary. I mean, my average price point in the areas that I service is around 425. But obviously there's much higher and there's
Right.
much more affordable areas too. But truly, it just depends on what suburbs. I would say the biggest thing with my clients relocating here, whether it's especially from out of state, is that property taxes is like the biggest thing. I mean, the
Mm.
property taxes are pretty crazy here, and that's one of the reasons a lot of people relocate out of the Chicagoland area. I mean, I have an uncle that tells me all the time is that Chicago is a great place to make money, but it's an awful place to retire. Just
Okay.
because I mean, my parents' house is just a 4 bed, 2.5 bath, like nothing huge, like 2,200 square feet with a base without a basement, and our property tax is like $13,000.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's crazy. So that's why a lot of people, leave and everything like that. But yeah, typically the ballpark, I mean, like I said, 4 bed, 2.5 bath colonial style home with a basement between 500, 600, and then, you can find a ranch here, between that 300 and $400,000 range. That's moving ready.
Yeah, so to compare and contrast the property taxes here in Georgia, at least the metro county Atlanta
Mhm.
areas that I serve, a good kind of rule of thumb is that the property taxes are about 1% of the purchase price of the house.
That's nice.
So, yeah, so a drastic
Oh
difference
my
there
gosh.
in
That's
the
crazy.
property taxes. One of the things I know a lot of Tennessee and Florida make a lot of like the best places to move or relocate states
Hmm.
because in those states there are no
Hmm.
state income taxes.
Right.
So, people seek that out for that, tax savings, and
Hmm.
then yet sometimes, especially in Florida, those property taxes are a lot higher.
Right.
And
Hmm.
so when we've worked with clients that are moving from Florida to Georgia, they're sad about losing that discount on the income tax, but then when they see the savings that they're getting on their property taxes, they're like,
Taxes.
oh, okay, this kind of negates each other and makes up
Right.
for it.
For sure.
Yeah. We have a viewer, Anthony. He said that he just spit out his drink whenever he heard you say how much his property taxes are.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy here, honestly. I mean, there's some areas like in the Chicago suburbs where the tax rate is just insanely high, and you go on the neighboring town over, and it's significantly less, but the same schools. So I
Okay.
think with a lot of clients that that come here and relocate over here, and that I chat with all the time, usually the main trend is that they're like, no, we want Naperville schools, right? Because Naperville.com ranks #1 with the best public schools in America. And the thing is that they don't realize that there's other towns besides Naperville that flood or that filter into those school systems.
Mm.
So it's just always cool to talk about it. And like I said, like Naperville has higher property tax, but if you go to Lisle, property tax are lower, and you still get Naperville schools in some parts of it.
Yeah, definitely. So, today we're talking about the best and worst places to live in the US, and there's been a lot of articles recently that have come out. I'm going to share this one slide, and this came from Redfin.
Right.
And so,
Hmm.
Redfin is a brokerage, and they also have a lot of great data.
Hmm.
But they put this out of the housing market's likely to hold up best in 2023. And the top two of those are the areas that you serve, right? So Lake County, Illinois, and Chicago, Illinois area.
Hmm.
Um, why do you think this is?
I think, especially Chicago, I mean, I would say that, with everything that's happened with the pandemic and everything like that, with a lot of working from home, I think Chicago is like the city of Chicago by itself. I mean, I believe it's like 50% of people that live in the city of Chicago are renters. Um, just because like how like affordable it is and everything like that to get a rental over there. But the reason I think the Midwest and just everything and like Chicago, Lake County, even Elgin, Illinois, because I have some clients that live there as well, and I actually have a client moving there as we speak that closed on a beautiful house there next month. But the biggest thing is that we have infrastructure here in terms of like the suburbs. I mean, like where I live and everything like that. I mean, there's not a lot of new build subdivisions going on anymore. Like you typically to get a new build house now is that you have to find a house with a small ranch and a great lot, and you build up from there. School systems are great. We have easy access to the city of Chicago, and the city of Chicago has a lot of growth coming in my opinion, especially in the next 5 years. Especially with places like California, New York, with the housing boom and everything like that, and prices just skyrocketing over there. I think Chicago just lays that if you want that big city living with more affordability, I think Chicago's the place to go. And there's a lot of job growth happening, whether it be healthcare. There's a lot of tech coming in and stuff like that. So I think that's the reason why the Midwest is going to be doing great, especially the Chicago suburbs and say Chicago.
Yeah, I was surprised on this list to see so many northern towns.
Hmm.
So, Pittsburgh, New Haven, Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut. I always think of any New York towns or Connecticut towns to be pretty expensive, or I've always heard that it's really
Right.
an expensive area to live in. So, I guess this data was pulled from maybe like markets holding their value in their homes
Hmm.
um, the most. So,
Hmm.
that was interesting. Another article that kind of dived in, and we talked about this. Oh, sorry, trying to work the settings here and get
Technology.
everything going. It's always difficult to manage. But Realtor.com, and we
Hmm.
shared this last week on the live stream, predicted that Atlanta was going to be one of the markets to hold up the best. And
Hmm.
so, looking at their 2023 national housing forecast, here in the Atlanta area, they're predicting that the sales growth year over year is going to go down by 0.3%, but that the 2023 price growth is going to go up 4.7%.
Hmm.
So, Brandon, I'm sure you're having this conversation with your buyers as well. Is
Hmm.
that we see the headline right now of like the
Right.
sky is falling, the market is crashing.
Right.
Um, you know, home prices are just going to fall and go on a downward spiral.
Right.
And the national headlines seem that way. But then when you dig into like your local market, like when you see something like this, where it says the
Hmm.
Atlanta market's the sales prices are going to go up 5%
Hmm.
year over year. Um, what is that looking like for you, and how are you having those conversations with clients that are looking to relocate?
Yeah, the conversation I'm typically just having with my clients is that, like you said, Sarah, I mean, we look at the national and then we look at very hyper local, because the hyper local is truly what matters if you're making that investment there, kind of in general. Oh yeah, Chicago, Naperville,
Yeah, so
everything like
Chicago
that.
was 3%. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, and what I just tell my clients all the time, is that at the end of the day, people buy and sell real estate because of life changes. I mean, like, if you're having a family and you live in a two-bedroom home and you have two kids, like, you're probably gonna need a upsize, right?
Right.
Work calls you to move somewhere, you're gonna need to relocate, you need to upsize down, like, whatever the case may be. And pretty much I just tell my clients is that, people buy and sell because of life changes. And then two, especially my clients that ask about interest rates all the time, is that, at the end of the day, if you buy now, and rates go down, you can just refinance. And if the rates like drop significantly to like 5.5 or 5, I think the market's going to go be pretty crazy, because I'm not sure how it is over by you, but we have like no inventory, like nothing. And then, if the rates jump up to like a 7.5, 8, I think the market's going to be very, very slow and there's not going to be a lot of movement. But you're going to be loving your interest rate in the mid sixes right now. And then there's no inventory. So it's like, how can prices like significantly drop? And if it's in your game plan to be there for 5 to 10 years, I think you're solid. So, and there's not a lot of competition right now. So I think that's kind of what the conversations I'm having with my clients, and just really figuring out like what their end goal is at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that you said that about like how long you're going to be in the house, because that's an
Mhm,
important factor to take into consideration. And
mhm,
um, there's a lot of really great economists and experts that are predicting that mortgage rates are going to land
mhm,
somewhere in the mid fives this
mhm,
year.
mhm.
And I've been telling people that um, if and when that happens, there is so much pent up demand for
Oh
housing
yeah.
right now.
Mhm.
And a lot of buyers have not been able to buy a house over the past
Right.
2 years because they've either gotten priced out or the interest
Mhm.
rates shot up and then they couldn't afford to buy the house. And
Right.
everyone's going to come back out and be like, okay, yes, now it's time to buy a house. And then you got the
Right.
competition all over again.
Mhm.
And I'm likely, thinking that we are going to see those multiple offer situations return, especially
Mhm.
for, that first time home buyer price point, up
Mhm.
until the 500-600 price point homes.
Mhm.
That is kind of like the sweet spot where, you're seeing that in your market. And that's
Mhm.
what I'm seeing here too, as well. There's just a lot of demand for houses there and
Mhm.
inventory is so low.
Mhm.
And, people are selling because they have to for job relocations, death, birth
Mhm.
of babies.
Mhm.
But we just came out of a market where, people were you would traditionally sell because you just wanted a
Right.
bigger house just because you
Right.
wanted one, or
Right.
just because you wanted to be in a different part of town,
Right.
and you could easily make that move. Well, a lot of people aren't selling their house like they used to. They're only doing that because they have to, or there's a huge
Mhm.
necessity. Because you have to think that some of these sellers have got like some really excellent interest rates that they've locked in over the
Right.
past couple of years. So they're not wanting just to make that move just because they can or because they
Mhm.
want to. It's more out of that necessity.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, I mean, I feel like the transition going from like a 3.5% interest rate to like a 5.5 is less brutal than going from like a 3.5 to a seven and
Yeah.
7.5 interest rate. And like you said, like there's a ton of pent up. I have like a lot of clients that want to move, and I have a lot of clients that want to upsize. I need to sell. I have the inventory. It's just like where are my people going? So it's a lot. Me and you, we just gotta put puzzles together. It's pretty crazy, and it's pretty interesting to see. I mean, like I said, I mean, rates drop. I think it's gonna be crazy. Rates go up. I think it's gonna be pretty slow. So
Yeah. So speaking of rates, Corey asked the question, do you expect a drop in housing within this year, or will rates drop and market go up? Yeah, so that was a good question that we kind of just talked through and answered, right? So
yep.
I love that question that you asked, Corey. Dirk said that he loves Chicago. The cold there in January puts Michigan to shame, though. Coldest
Mhm.
I've ever been on Magnificent Mile in January.
Yeah, the cold is I mean, it's windy city for a reason. I mean, once that went like it could be 30 degrees here, but it could really feel like 5 because of the wind chill. And especially when you're say Mag Mile, like yeah, it's the wind is brutal when it gets windy. So like definitely the coldest like it is. But it's actually been a really mild winter here. I mean, the coldest it's been was actually last week. I mean, we had a day in November this year that was like 70 degrees, and that is
Mm.
unheard of. And we've just had a mild December. I mean, it's been like in the 40s for a long time. And then last week it was actually Christmas weekend was actually like 0 degrees. So that was the coldest it's been all year.
Yeah. I was actually in Indianapolis with my in-laws, and that was the coldest weather I've ever been in. It was -10 the day that
Oh,
we got
yep.
there,
Hmm.
and the wind chill was like down to like -30.
It sucks.
So I definitely could not have dealt with that. Um, we drove back in the snow to Georgia, and that was not fun. My windshield wiper fluid was frozen in my
Frozen.
car, so we could not like wash off the windshield,
That's
and so it
funny.
was like driving through the haziest, dirtiest windshield. And we would stop at the gas station, and I would get like a bottle of water and wash it off. And then like 2 minutes down the road, it was like same back to how it was, and I was like,
That's
"This is
funny.
just I give
That's
up."
funny.
Yeah, it took us forever to get back home.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and I love that you called it the Mag Mile. I guess that's what locals call it.
That's the Chicagoans call it the Mag
Okay.
Mile.
So if you're going to visit Chicago and you want to sound like a local, that's what you call it.
Chicago Mag Mile. And always say you're from
Yeah,
the city of Chicago, even if you're from the suburbs.
that's right. Dirk says that Atlanta is insulated by their diverse industries, probably no better place to ride out a recession. Yeah, that's a good thing. I think it's a great thing that both Atlanta and Chicago has going for it is that we are very insulated because of the very,
Mhm.
very strong growth in jobs. And we've got a lot of tech companies that have relocated. Google, Microsoft, they both have
Mhm.
headquarters here now in the Atlanta area. So that definitely helps um, provide a lot of great job opportunities and insulates the Georgia market.
Mhm.
So if you're joining us and tuning in live, thanks for being here. And if you have any questions about the housing market, obviously I cover the North Metro Atlanta area, and we have Brandon Blankenship on with us right now. And he is a fantastic agent that serves the suburbs of Chicago. And Brandon also has a YouTube channel as well. Brandon, how can they find you?
You can find me. You reach out to me on my cell phone. Call, text me 630-923-9535. You can call, text. Easiest way to get a hold of me. I have no girlfriend, wife, or kids, so it's easy for me to work. And my people that watch me on my channel always reference that, and they always reference me about just I always talk about food and beer, because that's kind of what I love and just being a foodie. But no, yeah, that's the
So what's
easiest
the
way to
name of your
reach me.
channel though, if they want to go watch some videos about
If you
Chicago?
want to watch some of my videos, it's called "Living in the Chicagoland Area" by Brandon Blankenship. Pretty easy to find. I mean, if you just type in "living in Naperville," you'll probably find my channel right there. And honestly, any Western suburb, I've probably made a video on it so far, and super easy to find me.
Yeah, we'll make sure to put a link in the comments for everyone watching as well. Um, I love that you say that. So I didn't realize, but in an earlier video that I made on my channel, we live on Lake Lanier here in Georgia, and my husband prides himself on being like an outdoorsman person. And
Right.
we used to live down on the coast of Georgia,
Uh-huh.
and we would go fishing. And down there, you could like put your fishing pole in the water and you would catch like anything, like a
Right.
stingray, a fish, like you're guaranteed to catch something. And
Right.
then we move here, and he goes out fishing on the lake, and he's like used to being like the South Georgia boy that always catches fish in ponds or whatever, and
Yep.
can't catch a dang thing on the lake. And so I shared that in one of my videos when I was covering about the lake, and
Mhm.
I was showing a client who they relocated from California, and the husband stops me and he said, "I just have to ask, like, is it true that your husband has really never caught a fish?" And I was like, "Oh God, did I say that?" Like, thankfully, my husband does not watch my videos. But yeah, I mean, every now and then he'll catch like a little baby fish, but
Uh-huh.
not like the fish that you're supposed to catch. So
No,
I
that's
decided,
that's the best when people just reference like what you like little like just little things like that.
yeah.
Like my client like everyone that reaches out to me from YouTube, they always know I like talk about Chick-fil-A. So they always say that because they always ask me for recommendations on food. They're like, just not Chick-fil-A. I'm like, you watch the videos. Awesome.
So speaking of that, what about Chicago pizza? Um,
Chicago pizza is it's probably the best pizza ever. Like it doesn't like deep dish pizza is the most incredible pizza in the world. Our big chains is Luminati's and Giordano's, and it's kind of like the every time I'm in Chicago, I make sure yes, you have to
yeah.
get deep dish pizza, Anthony. But it's like the Chicago White Sox and the Chicago Cubs. It's
Okay.
kind of the equivalent to like Giordano's and Illuminati's pizza. And the only right answer to that question is that you had to pick Illuminati's because Giordano's is the wrong answer. But there's a lot of places in the state of Chicago that have like that they do their own deep dish pizza, like Pequod's and everything like that, and like hole in the wall places that have much better deep dish pizza than those big chains. But I mean, I'm always satisfied with Illuminati's and Giordano's Pizza. And the food scene here in the Chicago area is just incredible. We have this thing called Chicago Restaurant Week, where where you can go like for, I think it's like for the month, or I'm pretty sure it's for the month. But basically, what happens is like all the 5-star restaurants have special menus where
Mm.
you can go to their restaurants, make a reservation, and pretty much just have a 5-course meal that you probably wouldn't typically go to and get at a much reduced cost, which is it's incredible.
Sounds like I need to come up there for a food vacation. I love to
You
eat too.
do.
So that
Yes,
sounds like a
it's
really, really
awesome.
great food. Georgia doesn't really have great pizza at all.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah. So what about like Chicago hot dogs? I see that like a lot of places. Is that really a thing there?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Okay.
I mean, the Chicago hot dogs, like, pretty much people like, when you get a Chicago hot dog here, it's relish, mustard, pickle, onion, and peppers. And that's how it is. I mean, if you ask for ketchup on a Chicago hot dog, they're just gonna look at you funny. But a lot of people just like I don't like mustard at all. I like hate mustard, but that's the only thing I can eat mustard on. And we have great places that like get hot dogs. I mean, our staple for like hot dogs and Italian beef and cheese fries is called Portillo's. And then I
Yeah,
mean,
I've
in
heard
the
of that.
state of Chicago, I mean, there's great just hot dog places in general. I mean, Gene and Jude's is the number one hot dog place in the US, and it's in the Chicago suburbs, and it's the
What's it called?
greatest Gene and Jude's.
Gene and Jude's. Okay.
Yeah, it's the number one place to get hot dogs in the US, and there's always lines out the door. But they're like their machines there, and it's like clockwork. And like even though the line's long, you're gonna get it in like 10 minutes. The menu's like 4 items. It's like, what do you want, a
Right.
hot dog or a hot dog? So,
Yeah.
so
I guess really the only food that Georgia is known for is just our Southern cooking, right? So we have good,
sounds incredible.
Southern restaurants, stuff like that. I grew up in South Georgia, and you do see it here some in the North Georgia area, but boiled peanuts. I don't know, like you'll just see like you'll be randomly driving down like a country road, and there'll be like an old man parked with his truck selling boiled peanuts on this like a gas cooker, and they sell them by the bag full, and they're so good. It's like the
That's
perfect
awesome.
little salty
That
snack.
sounds delicious.
Yeah, it is really, really delicious. It kind of tastes like edamame. I don't.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, like the peas and everything like that.
right. Yeah, so it kind of
Yeah,
has an
nice.
edamame taste, but way better.
That's solid. That sounds
So,
delicious.
if you have any questions about the real estate market, Brandon and I are answering those questions and sharing with you our favorite foods as well. So go ahead and ask those away in the comment section, and we'll make sure that we answer those as well. We have a viewer and a client, Mark. He says that he's been to Chicago but hates that he never made it to Portillo's when he was in Chicago last year. That just
Yeah,
means
so
he has
that's
to go back, right?
that you can come back and yeah, the 100%. I mean, that's the one place, especially with my clients that relocate here from out of state that have never like been to Chicagoland area. That is the one place that you have to go and just grab food
Portillo's.
because it's Portillo's because it's like it's not like a sit down restaurant, but it's a fast food place, but it's like nicer than a fast food spot because they have like nice tables and everything like that. You go
Yeah,
to the booth, order, grab your meal, and you just sit down. But best place. I mean, I probably eat there like 2 to 3 times a month. It's bad.
that's funny. Anthony has a good question. He says, has
Okay.
Chicago seen a lot of purchases made by investments or iBuyers? I think Atlanta has around 30% of investors buying homes last year.
Yeah, I've noticed in this. I'll talk about the suburbs. Investors, yes, I've noticed it. I actually have a colleague that had a listing in the summer of 2022, and she had a multiple offer situation, and one of the offers just kind of like blew everyone away, and it was an investor that was just buying up a lot of real estate, and they were just trying to buy the street. So I personally, in terms, I mean, I list a good amount of homes every year, and I personally, it's more just like families and stuff like that. But I know I have colleagues out in the state of Chicago that can say that like, yeah, there's a lot more, definitely investors kind of purchasing. I had a Chicago condo listed for sale, and on Randolph, and a lot of people, there was an investor that bought it, and they were just buying up the building. So I think that, there is a lot of purchases made by investors, but I would say what I've seen and what I personally work with in terms of my listing side and everything like that is that it's primarily just, people that are going to live in the property for the most part.
Yeah. So, what Anthony referenced of like having 30% of homes purchased by investors, that was very much true. So,
Wow.
a lot of those investors were backed by big companies like Open Door. There's a big investment buyer called First Key Homes, and so their intention, for the most part, most of those homes were built, or I'm sorry, bought and held by companies that turned them into rentals.
Hmm.
So they were just buying up huge amounts of inventory,
Wow.
which caused prices, to go up, and they were making very aggressive offers on homes.
Yeah.
So, traditionally when we think about of an investment offer, usually they're a little bit below fair
Lowball.
market value.
Hmm.
And we had these investors come in making these insane, great cash offers. And then they were turning around and having these houses become rental homes.
Hmm.
And the long-term repercussions for us here in this Atlanta market is that these are traditionally homes that would have been sold to first-time home buyers or in that
Hmm.
first-time home buyer price point. And
Hmm.
now they're stuck as rentals for who knows how long they're going to hold
Right.
on to these properties
Hmm.
and may never come back to the market. And so
Right.
that's kind of like a scary thing to think of, that
Yep.
potentially 30% of the market is no longer going to come back to the market.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. It's kind of like that here that I've noticed and like just read articles on. It's kind of like that first. It's the first time. It's a lot of the ranch houses over here, like the 3 bed, 2 baths, is especially because we have a lot of there's a lot of like small private colleges around the area and stuff like that. So for like
Hmm.
housing in terms of that, and just people renting over here too, especially in like those the neighborhoods where they want their kids to go to school. You're pretty much going to have your tenant in there. From what I've noticed, and the landlords that I've talked to that have long-term rentals that have held for a long, long time, is that their tenants are typically in there for about 4 to 5 years, honestly, while their kids graduate. So,
Right. Um, so I found this interesting article. It says these are the best and worst places to move in 2023, according to an economist. And this was posted on entrepreneur.com. And they're basing this based on Redfin's chief economist, Daryl Fairweather. And so he said that he named Austin, Phoenix, and Las Vegas as particularly risky investments due to the likelihood of home price drops
mhm,
in the near future. And I think, whenever you're seeing like headlines of prices falling and dropping, these are the big major markets that are really driving those headlines.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I would say for that is just because, in my opinion, is because all the California sellers that relocated to those states were buying cash, and like there's a lot more new builds going on over there, and rates have went up. Affordability is not the same, and a builder is just not going to build a home for cheaper. So I mean, if those homes aren't moving, and a lot of those homes in that market are new builds, it kind of makes it tough. That's why here a lot of my clients, I kind of just tell them I think the best investment is just be a mile away from the train line. Because I mean,
Yeah.
eventually people I think are going to go back to work in the state of Chicago, so they're going to have easy access there still. But like I said, like where I live and work and shoot a lot of my content at, I mean, our infrastructure is pretty much here. I mean, there's like no new build communities going up, and it's a lot of like family oriented neighborhoods, and the schools are typically, according to niche, are either eight or not, eight plus in rating. So.
Yeah. So speaking of your neck of the woods,
Hmm.
as we say down here in Georgia, Fairweather said that she advises that the Midwest and Northeast are areas that are going to tend to retain their value. And she added that Lake County, Illinois, Albany, New York, New Haven, Connecticut, Milwaukee, and Chicago are generally safe investments for both the short and long term.
Hmm.
So there again, Chicago is making making its mark on a area to be.
Yeah, even though people always say that, a lot of people are leaving Chicago, which is true, but it's a lot more snowbirds and stuff like that. People just retiring, I would say, and just getting into the warmer climate and stuff like that. But a lot of people here in the Chicagoland area have secondary homes, whether it's a condo in Florida or Georgia, or they're just moving up a little more north to Wisconsin and getting a lake house and stuff like that.
Yeah. Um, the National Association of Realtors, they did their 2023 like housing market forecast, and they named these top real estate markets to watch in 2023. Atlanta ranked at the top there. So that's exciting for us. And then we followed with Raleigh, Dallas, the Fayetteville area of Arkansas, Missouri area, Greenville, South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, Huntsville, Alabama, Jacksonville, Florida. That was surprising to me. Um,
Yeah.
the San Antonio, New Braunfels, Texas area, and Knoxville, Tennessee. They're expecting that the demand for housing in these areas are going to continue to outpace supply. And that's, we talked about how there is this huge, pent up amount of demand,
Hmm.
but yet the inventory levels are slow to rise.
Hmm.
Um, One of the things that, we've had several, I don't know if you have this challenge in your area, but sometimes we have clients that want to move to Georgia and they reach out and they give us their price point, and then we show them the available inventory or lack of
Hmm.
inventory that's here, and it's like, oh,
Hmm.
it's really hard to make this work.
Hmm.
Here's an area that I think you should consider, that's not necessarily in the metro Atlanta area. And for me here in Georgia, one of those markets is Augusta.
Hmm.
um, Augusta, Georgia is a lot more affordable.
Hmm.
Obviously, the town's completely different, but it's a lot more
Hmm.
affordable
Hmm.
than the Atlanta market. And so I have a really, really great, excellent agent partner in Augusta that helps out a lot of these clients and help them find, much more affordable housing.
Hmm.
Do you have like a suburb or an area like that maybe is like your go-to pivot if a client can't afford the Chicago suburbs?
Yeah, I would say typically a lot of times I'm just saying a good rule of thumb is like the farther away you go from the city of Chicago, the more affordable it's gonna be. So like I said, I'm like a 45 minute drive to the city of Chicago. So my access is like it's very easy to get to the city. But if you go a little more west, and a lot of times, like I have clients, one of the suburbs I service called Wheaton, Illinois. And usually a lot like clients that like I show them the inventory that are relocating to the area, I show like, hey, like this is kind of what we have right now. We in just terms of the inventory is like getting hit pretty hard, but you should really consider places like a Batavia, Geneva, or St. Charles, because you can get the same home for like $100,000 less, but like it's up and coming, and I mean the downtown areas are awesome, and I think that's one of the most underrated things about the Chicago suburbs is that we just have like great, cute little downtown areas that have a lot of like great little restaurants, boutique stores, coffee shops. There's this place in Glen Ellen where I'm born and raised and primarily do all my work is that called Blackberry Market, and they have the best cinnamon rolls in the Chicago suburbs. And I tell my clients that, and I'd say in all my videos. But yeah, there for sure are places. You go a little more west, you go a little more south from where I service, and the farther you get out of the city, definitely more affordable. And there's a lot of towns like if you're looking for a certain school district, and usually I like working with my clients and working backwards. Like if they're looking for a school district, like then we know there. Especially, but if they're looking for a high school, usually there's like a few towns that will filter in that specific high school. So it's much easier if they're not looking for a certain elementary or middle school for sure. But yeah, definitely there are more affordable areas that I usually talk about.
Yeah. Mark says that he can vouch for the Austin market. We sold our house for $100,000 less than we initially listed it for. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those areas. We also see a lot of that
That's crazy.
happening on the West Coast in California. We have a lot
Yeah.
of clients that are trying to sell their house there to make the move out to Georgia, and that time period is going a lot longer. I just talked to a
Hmm.
client who they're expected for it to take 120 days for their house to sell in California
Wow.
based on the data that they're seeing.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, it is crazy. So the average days on market here in the metro Atlanta area right now is around 20 something days whenever a house is priced appropriately. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And
That's crazy. Oh
yeah,
my gosh. 120 days. Wow.
yeah. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And here's one thing to know, that if you're watching right now, the data and the statistics that we're giving you is very, very local to the markets that we serve.
Hmm.
And so the doom and gloom headlines may not be the case for your town. And so it's
Right.
always really, really great to have that trusted local advice from a really great real estate agent who is up to
Hmm.
date on all the data that can tell you what's happening in your market, because each market is different and
Hmm.
individualized. And if you need recommendations for a real estate agent in your area, you can definitely reach out to Brandon or I. We have really great connections all across the country. And we can also do that like behind the scenes research for you to make sure that we're putting you in front of a really great agent.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony says that his folks live in Huntsville, and his dad mentioned that NASA is moving a bunch of folks to Huntsville to work on the military base down there. Tons of homes and apartments popping up all over the town. Yeah, we can always like really count on military towns to be a very good area for investment and housing, just because there's
For sure.
always great turnover there. So that makes sense. We have another great agent, Rebecca, watching, and she says that the Dallas market is a good place to invest. So that is, there's good investment opportunities all over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Mark said that it took him 120 days to sell his house.
That's crazy. That's just so crazy. I mean, I know that's like norm and stuff like that, but I mean, just thinking of the Austin market, I mean, that's because I remember just reading the headlines 2 years ago, like Austin was booming. And you know, I have a YouTube friend, you probably know him as well,
Right.
Sarah, Jeremy Knight. I
Yeah.
mean, he talks about it all the time, and just like how like it was booming, and just seeing like the month over month stats, and it was pretty remarkable to see, truly, especially with all the job reload, the job, like the companies opening up over there, and the people cashing out of California and buying property in Austin for cash. And then you don't need an appraisal, and when you're going 75K over list, everyone's values go up, and it's crazy.
Yeah. We have a viewer watching all the way from Brazil. That's exciting.
That's very cool.
Yeah. I'm excited. I get to help a client relocate from Australia, which I think is probably the furthest away we've ever had someone reach out. Have you ever had anybody from like far away?
Philippines, actually. Some
wow.
of my team that helps me, we helped them purchase a place in Aurora, Illinois, which is just west of where I live, probably like 20 minutes west of me, and came from the Philippines. It was super cool. Like, runs a business and everything like that. Like, it was just it's so cool, just the people that relocate to the area, and I love it. Just learning about people and like where they're coming from, and then just touring homes with them, and it's like talking to like what's common in their area and like what's different from here. It's just super cool to see.
Yeah, I think the most surprising thing about going on this adventure of making content, helping clients relocate, has been the learning process of what is different about houses and the house buying experience in Georgia versus whatever state they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's like little nuances that each kind of geographic area has about houses that are unique that are not true in where they're coming from, or like environmental things. So I had clients from California relocate to Georgia, and the first time we had a thunderstorm, they just thought like the world was ending because they're not used to thunderstorms in California. Like, it rarely happens. And that was just something that I'd never considered to talk about in any of my content or videos.
That's so funny.
Because I've never experienced anything different. Like, thunderstorms are very normal. So
it's crazy.
Have you had anything like that in Chicago from people relocating elsewhere that you've had to learn to talk about?
I've had, let's see, I had some clients just relocate from Clarksville, Tennessee. And the wife, she didn't think it was going to be like this cold, because I told her like the weather has been mild, but I remember I stopped at their place for Christmas to drop off a gift, because they live in town where I live. And it was crazy. Like, I was just wearing like a blazer and everything like that. I thought 30 degrees was warm because I'm used to it, but she was just like all bundled up and everything like that. And she told me, she's like, Brandon, you're right, it does get cold. Yeah, it's so funny, like the weather changes and everything like that. I mean, like, when I lived in California, like my blood just like my blood just changed. Like, I was cold in 60. Like, usually here in Chicagoland, I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt at 60 degrees. So but yeah, there's just always interesting things that like clients will bring up that aren't from the area, and it's like, interesting. I'm like born and like raised with this. Like, it's just funny.
Rebecca asked for you, Brandon. Do you speak Tagalog?
I don't.
Did I say that right?
Tagalog.
Tagalog. Oh,
Yeah. So
oh,
it's
okay.
a it's
Yeah.
it's a it's a Filipino dialect. I
Okay.
don't. My mom speaks it. I personally don't. And then I'm half Filipino, half Thai. But I don't speak Thai either. Do I understand? No, not at all. It's very bad. I wish because it would be awesome. I would make some videos in that dialect.
Yeah.
But I wish.
Rebecca also said it looks like the Austin market bit off a little bit more than it could chew, and all those cash offers and appraisal waivers. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy how it just went one way to like just flipped. Like it's crazy to me.
Yeah. Are you seeing? So one of the challenges that we're having here in the market is
Mhm.
um, we see sometimes home prices come down,
Right.
but really the reason that those home prices have come down, it's because the seller or the agent did not
Right.
price that house right to begin with.
Mhm.
Do you feel that same? Are you seeing that same thing happening in your market where sellers
Mhm.
are seeing like what their neighbors sold their house for 6 months ago, and then they want to price it at that price?
Yeah, all the time. I would say a big thing right now is that I feel like 2022 was like the tale of two markets, right? The first 6 months was much different from the last 6 months. And I mean, when I was comping homes like in like the beginning of the year last year, like I usually go 3 months out, but I had to go like 6 to 12 just to get some, comps. And now it's just like, my sellers, as long as I show them the data, I mean, they kind of make their decision and they price it. I give 'em like, it's all at the end of the day, it's all their power and what we're to price at, and we're just
Right.
kinda, showing them our thoughts and everything like that, where the market is. But, some of my clients wanna try it and then kinda go from there, but a lot of the clients I'm helping, like, purchase homes and stuff like that, especially homes that have been on the market for 2 months, I have a conversation with the agent, they haven't had offers in 2 months, and a lot of times my clients think that, like, "Oh, can we just get at list price?" I'm like, let's go like below. Like they have no
Yeah.
offers. I mean, but I think the funniest thing to me, especially within the first 6 months of 2022, and then we transitioned the last 6 months of 2022, is that I feel like a lot of buyers just kind of had the mindset like it was going multiple offers, it's going over list.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people just didn't want to get involved with that. But when the rates started like going up, I just told my people like, hey, like you can you don't have to. Like, let's try it. Let's try it here and see what happens. They have no offers. Like, you have nothing to lose right here.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, for sure. Like, there are homes that are priced at should that was priced like 5 months ago. Um, but at the end of the day, you're gonna get the true value typically, or like the best value when you price it just at market value.
Yeah. So I had a house, we listed it a couple of months ago, but it was
Hmm.
right at kind of like the time where the market was definitely shifting.
Hmm.
And so we had the conversation with the seller of we can price it aggressively high
Hmm.
and it's likely going to sit on the market. So they were in a situation where they needed to move because of a job and they
Hmm.
had a house that they wanted to get, but
Hmm.
that seller was not going to accept the contract unless we had their home under contract. So
Hmm.
I was like, okay, this is the best price where I think that we should price it at to get a quick contract on it.
Hmm.
And the showings that we actually had on the house that first weekend was very slow. We only had like two or three.
Hmm.
And the contract that we ended up getting or the offer that we got on that house that weekend was actually over asking price.
Wow.
And I was like, why? Like, what did your agent tell you? Because this is not
Right.
the market anymore for multiple offers where you
Right.
need to be that aggressive, but okay,
Hmm.
we'll take it.
Hmm.
So that is also something to keep in mind is that you want to make sure that your agent is up to date on what's going on in the market so that you're not getting that advice from your agent who's telling you to go over asking price when you don't have to.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing too. I mean, I had some clients that a YouTube friend of mine sent over that I helped that are awesome people. And I remember we listed their house mid last year and we just had one offer that just blew everything out of the water. And I was like, and this is when the market was already like shifting. I was like,
Right.
and we only had two offers or three offers on the table, and I was like, okay, you guys, like even if it doesn't appraise out, like where it's still gonna appraise over all these other offers. So I was like, let's go for it. Like, what are your thoughts? We went for it, and obviously, I was right in terms of what the outcome was going to be. It didn't praise, but it still praised more than all the other offers that we had. I'm like, congratulations, you guys, and it was funny. So
Yeah. This viewer asked that he saw a house on a Sunday, made an offer on Monday, went under contract on a Tuesday, and planning to close February 1st. Any advice? Wow. Sounds like you got
awesome.
a house under contract pretty quickly, and congratulations on getting your offer accepted. I guess my advice would be to make sure you get a home inspection. If you're not getting a home inspection, make sure you have that lined up and ready to go. You need to be doing that within the next day or so. So make sure that's in place. You just want to make sure you're protecting the investment and that the house is
Mhm.
in good working order and that there's no surprises. Yeah, that would be the next step and the best advice that I could give for you at this point when you're under contract.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Just inspect. I think the biggest thing is just inspection, so you're comfortable in your own peace of mind. And I know there's other inspections that you typically recommend here in Illinois, like a sewer scope and radon. Not sure how it is wherever you are purchasing a home, immersive experiences, but your agent should have the knowledge to recommend other inspections to give you the most peace of mind going forward with a pretty big purchase.
Yeah, so congratulations on getting that, and you'll be in a new house by February 1st. That's exciting. So if you have any other questions about moving or questions about the housing market, questions about buying a house, selling a house, you have Brandon and I. We're going to be on here for just a few more minutes answering any questions that you may have. And we greatly appreciate you spending some time with us and sharing with us and asking your questions. So I going to share one more article that I found based upon the best and worst places to move. And Yahoo, I didn't even know Yahoo was still a thing, but apparently it is. Yahoo Finance named the best U.S. cities to start over in 2023. And some of the reasons were kind of funny, but they based these off of pure population, employment, social scene, and living cost. And so they
Social scene.
found that St. Louis, Missouri was the top rated city in the US for people looking to start over. What do you think about that?
I mean, Missouri's in the Midwest, right? Yes, it is.
Yes. Yeah.
My thoughts on the Midwest is that if I were ever to live, like if I was coming from out of state or anywhere like that and relocating to the Midwest specifically, the only place I could move to is like the Chicagoland vicinity because I feel like, I mean, I'm not a big city guy, but like I feel just like having access to it like whenever I want is just like a luxury. So I mean, I I'm biased. I ain't moving to
Ye-
St. Louis.
Yeah. Um, and Atlanta made the list at number 9 as one of the best cities
Uh,
to start over. You see Orlando on there. And then there is like Hartford, Connecticut again. I need to do some more
Interesting.
research on Hartford. I don't understand what's so great about it. And
Salt Lake
Buffalo, New
City,
York. I just feel like that's just such a cold climate, expensive
right?
area to live in.
Expensive too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Salt Lake City. I actually had some clients relocate from Salt Lake City to Naperville. Um, and it was crazy because the house that they sold for like 775 or something like that was significantly smaller than the house they purchased here in Naperville, but much nicer and much bigger. It was like 200K less. It's crazy.
Yeah, here it says Hartford features one of the best social scenes in the country. Really? I don't think so. Hartford has many opportunities to get out, have fun, and meet people. Well, isn't it cold? Yeah, but I guess
I
I
mean,
don't know.
Chicago has a lot of that. I mean, it's a big city, so
Right. Let's see here. Atlanta, they're saying it excels, making it a strong option for people who want a fresh start. The city is the top 10 for the number of colleges and universities per 100,000 people, also top 5 for job growth, and it's first overall in the number of restaurants. Okay, I can get behind
interesting.
that. We do have a lot of great restaurants and a lot of good food in the Atlanta area as well. Um, if you're wanting to start over, I don't know that you necessarily think like, oh, let me go back to college. I guess you could though, but I feel like there's a lot of great jobs and things like that that are out there now that don't require you to have to go back to school.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for spending some time with Brandon and I tonight, answering your questions and sharing with you more about the differences between Atlanta, Chicago, and the best and worst places to live in 2023. So you can find Brandon on his channel. Tell us the YouTube channel again.
Yeah, the YouTube channel is living in the Chicago suburbs, like dash Brandon Blankenship. But if you just type in living in Chicago suburbs or just Chicago suburb real estate, like I'm probably gonna pop up honestly. So feel free to look me up there and shoot me a message if you just want to talk the best sports town in America, or great food, or just the best city in the world.
Awesome. One last question slipped in here. Lawby says, given the state of loan forgiveness up in the air, how do student loans figure into the equation in gaining pre-approval to purchase? Um, So actually the federal guidelines just changed for how lenders are able to calculate the student loan payments.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually now more in favor of the buyer with the student
Hmm.
loan. So they've become less stringent, or
Hmm.
it counts less is what it used to. So you're in a good situation that you're not really going to have to worry as much about that.
Hmm.
But a great lender will help walk you through that and tell you how that's going to affect you. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thanks so much again for joining us tonight. Again, you can catch me here most Wednesdays at 6 o'clock Eastern live, answering your questions. And then, of course, there is a recorded video that goes up every single Sunday. So thank you for watching. If you're thinking about making a move to Georgia, my contact information is below this video. If you're thinking about moving to Chicago, you will reach out to Brandon or the Chicago suburbs. So thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next week.
See you guys.